evening, everyone. I'll just project. How about that? My name is Rajendra Roy. I'm Chief Curator of the Department of Film here at MoMA, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this evening's screening of Maria. It's the movies, it's the opera, we need the audience involved. We are so grateful to our friends at Netflix for making this screening possible, and of course to our partners year-round, Chanel, for making everything we do here in our cinema possible. So this is the third of Pablo Larraín's films about great women in history. And all three of them now have been in the Contenders. So I'm wondering how many of you have been with us for Jackie, Spencer, and now Maria? Okay, the hardcore. How many have seen the other two up until now? So we will be fortunate enough to have a conversation with Pablo Larraín following this screening. We will be joined by his incredible cinematographer, Ed Lachman, as well as Massimo Cantini Parrini, the costume designer. So we'll really get us an idea of how Callas was brought to screen. We're going to have an updated version of our usual setup for the Q&A. We'll be seated right up here, so just so you're not caught off guard. And please, thank you in advance for your accommodation of this temporary setup. But for now, please enjoy Maria. To begin, first of all, by, of course, congratulating you, but to talk about creating an operatic film, right? Because that's really what it feels like, is that you've taken the story of Callas, of Maria Callas, and created something operatic within cinema. There we are. Something that involves great beauty, passion, humor, pain, and tragedy, of course. And Paola, I was wondering if we could start way back. I read something that your appreciation for opera was something that was instilled at a very young age with your parents?
Yeah, my mom used to take me to the opera as I grew up. In Santiago, in Chile, where I'm from, there's a beautiful opera house. And I grew up going to the operas, and I always refused to read the subtitles. And they were on top of the screen, like above. I just, not only because I thought that they were distracting, but I had to take my eyes, out of the stage. So my approach to opera and to cinema actually is not a rational one. Obviously I care about the storytelling, the plot, but I'm into the characters, in this case, into the music. So, and then we would get on the car with my mom, and she would drive back home, and she would put a cassette. I would say, "Son, we just heard something beautiful, but this is like Callas." I just would play it on. This is the real thing. So I grew up looking at this, at this icon of music, and then the opportunity of making this movie became real. And we made a movie about, I think it's something, and you're a strong cinephile, you know a lot more than I do. But I really don't know why there's so very few movies about opera. Given that it's such I have directed operas, and it's very similar, the work. And they have so much in common. It's very surprising that there are very few. So it was scary because of that. And then I understood that Maria Callas sang many operas over her lifetime, but I'd say that 8 of them were the ones that she sang the most. And in 7 of them, she was dead on stage when the opera was over. So when I called Steve Knight to see if he wants to write this, I said, do you realize that she became the sum of the tragedies that she played on stage? So that was the start of this film.
I'm glad you mentioned Stephen Knight, you're a screenwriter, because I wanted to ask a question that will lead to my first question for Ed, is about working with him to create that inner life, or the film within the film structure, right? Like this idea that her inner life, her inner thoughts, you would translate for the audience as a documentary, right? And kind of taking you mentioned, you know, rationality and opera. Well, they don't necessarily live in the same space always. Fantasy and the ability to think beyond the realm of the present or the reality that we live in. Just talk to a little bit about creating that device.
Well, but you know something that is incredible, that Angelina sings six times on screen in the film, but Callas or her is 12 times. So I originally designed like a musical map where the story or the scene in the opera where she's singing that aria specifically had a relationship with the scene in the movie. So then we subtitled it, and again, subtitles, we subtitled it in the editing room, and then it was so distracting because you would see the film and then some rational idea would come up and say, yeah, oh, it's the same thing, but it was just distracting. But I think this is what we discussed with that. I think cinema is something so wonderful that can let you see her and see the reality through her eyes. And I think perception is something that cinema can explore, in the human perception. We are, you know, we look at our phones, we see a reflection in a mirror, we see an ad, we see someone that we love, we see someone that we dislike. We see, you know, an elected president, and we can think about it. Whatever you think, but reality is moving so quickly in front of us. And I think that cinema can explore that. And I think this is what this movie does, that she's feeling things, remembering things, and that is involved with music, memory, and drugs, of course.
And Pablo gave you, well, this is back up a little. So you've done back-to-back projects together. El Conde, which was your last, absolutely, collaboration, which was part of this series last year and landed you with your third Oscar nomination. But in this project, he gave you a lot to play with, right? The structure of the film itself. And I read something where you actually shot 3 different film formats for this film, 35, 16, and Super 8. Talk to us a little bit about that and making your way from the script to your choices as you thought about shooting.
Well, in a general sense, it was, for me, the idea of what the experience is when you see an opera. And so the elements of an opera, which is a heightened sense of reality, fit for me what she actually said herself. She said, opera for me is my soul and the stage is my mind. So for me, it became how Pablo used the moving camera on a wider lenses. We follow her many times, and I feel it puts the audience in her shoes, in a sense. But also it's kind of a moving proscenium, a moving stage, the way an audience could feel they're watching an opera. And then it's not naturalistic, it's very expressionistic. The colors, the lighting, and for me, again, it was like to create an opera about Maria Callas visually with Pablo.
It's just stunning results. Massimo, in the opening minutes of this film, some of your creations are literally burned, right? But it kind of makes the point of how essential her clothing was, and in a way the way I see it, her armor was, of the costumes, her clothing. Talk to us a little bit about creating these objects, these vestments that were so important to her and gave her safety and protection in some cases. And clearly she placed such value in them that she needed to destroy them at that point in her life.
Okay, so I I need Lilia because I speak English, but I want to be refined. So
I told her.
sorry for. I'm gonna speak Italian, then she translate for me. Sì, lei aveva molte armature, nel senso che è una donna che alla fine della sua vita, naturalmente non sapeva di morire, però è come se si accorgesse che qualcosa stava succedendo, come si può vedere nel film. Infatti io l'ho voluta vestire di nero proprio perché è come se assistesse un po' al suo funerale. Mentre in casa io l'ho tenuta con colori molto chiari proprio perché il suo ambiente domestico e dove si sentiva più protetta da Bruna e Ferruccio. Però è stato un percorso meraviglioso anche perché sono stato aiutato naturalmente tantissimo da Pablo e da Angelina, perché io ho incontrato Pablo a Roma, è stato il nostro primo incontro e abbiamo parlato del film attraverso anche delle foto e quindi abbiamo potuto parlare benissimo dei look. Poi ho incontrato Angelina a Los Angeles ed è stata una collaborazione meravigliosa. Devo dire che difficilmente incontro una persona così, un'attrice così professionale nella vita, perché non ho mai avuto bisogno sul set di toccarla. Lei era completamente dentro il personaggio e non si muoveva un secondo dal costume, era completamente sempre perfetta. Ed ho voluto comunque, noi abbiamo dovuto ricreare degli abiti che sono iconici nella vita di Maria Callas, ma altri, soprattutto nell'ultima settimana della sua vita, sono stati un po', tra virgolette, inventati da me come se fossi il suo primo stilista. Ed è stata una collaborazione meravigliosa con Pablo naturalmente, con tutte le parti estetiche, quindi Ed, lo scenografo, è stata una collaborazione meravigliosa anche con trucchi e capelli, e secondo me questo è un film che lo paragono un po' ad una figura geometrica, cioè ogni lato che tu guardi è perfetto e quindi ogni aspetto è perfetto sempre.
Wow.
We know we have one of the best translators here, so we're going to stop.
Subtitles would be good here.
Just this energy. Yes, she did have multiple armors. She was a woman who was at the end of her life, even though she wasn't quite aware that she was about to die yet. But yes, she did realize that something was up. And so I dressed her in black in those scenes because it's as if she was participating in her funeral. Whereas when she was home, I opted for lighter colors because there she was in her home, it was her domestic environment, and she felt safe and protected by Bruna and Ferruccio. And of course, I was very much helped in this process by Pablo and Angelina. I met Pablo first in Rome, and we went over a lot of photos, and we had an opportunity to talk about those looks. And then I met Angelina later in LA, and it was such a wonderful collaboration. She is an incredible actress that is so professional. And I just imagine that on set, I never needed to touch her because she was so still. She would just stay there, and I didn't need to do anything. She was perfect. And so we needed to recreate these iconic dresses. Whereas for some of the later ones that she wore of the last week, they are outfits that I invented for her as if I was her last designer, her last stylist. So overall, it was an excellent collaboration, not just with Angelina and Pablo, but also with Ed, with the set designer, with the hair and makeup team. So it was a film that to me was like a geometric shape, because no matter which side you look at, it's always wonderful.
So clearly we need to talk about Angelina Jolie, but before we pivot to your actor, your lead actor, that robe, Massimo, that robe that she wears. So I saw this film in Venice.
Why everybody ask me about the robe?
The robe, because we all
I should
want
make more than one and then sell it.
You should. I came out of the screening and every man, every woman, we have to have this robe.
Okay. That robe. Again, so ho immaginato appunto questa vestaglia come una sorta di armatura, come tu dicevi prima, in modo che lei fosse protetta da questo, però è un'armatura che è leggera perché è fatta di lana. Io ho usato due tipi di lane, una è una lana pianta e un'altra è cashmere, ed è una lavorazione 3D in modo che sullo schermo potesse avere dei piani e non risultasse piatta. Ho scelto il colore avorio proprio perché casa sua è una sorta di paradiso, infatti lei morirà lì e si capisce anche appunto alla fine del film che quella sarà la sua tomba. Ed è una vestaglia veramente, io sono sorpreso dal fatto che tutti mi chiedano di questa vestaglia, perché è uno dei miei abiti preferiti del film, devo ammettere, anche Angelina l'ha amato moltissimo, e sono felice che quando tu pensi ad una cosa che credi che sia giusta, perché per me nel mio lavoro non esiste il bello o il brutto, ma esiste il giusto e lo sbagliato, e quindi quando una cosa è giusta ed arriva al pubblico, per me è vittoria pura.
Well, I imagined that robe, as you mentioned earlier, as an armor. And yes, it protected her, but at the same time, I wanted her to be a light armor. And so I made it out of wool, and there were two types of wool. There was a flat kind of wool and a cashmere. And having said that, the way they were processed, it was 3D, so that on screen, no matter which side you look at, it came out as multidimensional. There was nothing flat about it. And in terms of color, I chose ivory because that was the color palette for her home, which was her paradise, it was heaven. And in the end, she ends up dying there, and it's her tomb, it's her grave. And I'm surprised that everybody asks me about that all the time. It is among my favorite items in the entire movie, and Angelina loved it very much. But what I do like is that when you think about something in a movie which is the right thing, because to me, there's no such a thing as something that's beautiful or ugly, there's what's right in my work. That's how I approach that. So for me, when the audience perceives it that way, that's a victory.
So, Angelina Jolie does something incredible in this film, or many things incredible. But maybe Pablo and Ed, you could talk about, so she's singing, she learned to sing these operas, she sang them, I'm understanding, on set. And then the way you choose to shoot her at different moments in her life. There's the close-ups, and then there's the distance. And you talked about the proscenium view, and clearly her great love was being on stage and being in full view. I'm wondering how you made these decisions, layering in her safety as an actor, being so vulnerable, singing, and then how you shot her.
Well, there's an aspect that Massimo brought up where color for me is very important, that there's always an interplay between warm and cool colors. And so for me, her apartment was where her refuge, that there were warm colors, and then it's invaded by a cooler color, which is green, which I find most people find green is not appealing, that it's invasive. So that was another aspect of like trying to capture her world and how the emotions through the colors can affect. Painters always know that, and they've done studies about colors from Goethe in 1810 wrote a book called The Theory of Color, to Joseph Albers in the 60s wrote a book about interaction of color. So I've always tried to work with color not just as a decorative element, but as a psychological element. And so that was the aspect, I think. The other thing is that the way Pablo introduces these different textures between the Super 8, which was where she let her defenses down, and you don't see her as groomed and made up, and because she looked. And then the passed in black and white 35 millimeter, and then it was all shot on film, and then the color, the contemporary, or the 60s, the 70s. So I think all those elements help develop, your feeling. The hardest thing in a film is to create the inner life of someone, the interior world, which, in writing, you can do it in a sense. You can say how a person thinks or feels. But unless you do a voiceover in the film, that's what the strength of film is the observation from a distance that you see where you are placed. So I think that's what these different elements help us discover her feelings, even though Pablo talks about this, that really it's an enigma, that it's a mystery. We never really can know what she thought or felt, but we can feel the mystery, and the way she performs the role is that she doesn't give everything away.
Amazing. Pablo, I want to ask you about two of my other favorite elements of this film, and that's Alba Rohrwacher and Pierfrancesco Favino as her most intimates, right?
Can I say something before about the singing?
Of course, please.
Because I think it's very important. It's in the heart of this film. I don't know what like any of us can think about, like, after seeing a movie like this, in terms of how this is made. I know that if this would be, I don't know, a David Bowie like movie or a John Lennon movie, we could, like any of us, just get on a car, choose a song, and sing it quite well. You can do a decent job following the melody. You can't do that with opera. You can't cheat. You can't, because the pitch and the structure of the melody will never let you do that. So she prepared herself for 7 months. 2 of them were breathing and posture, and then it was just each of the arias that she sings every day for many, many hours, just going through it. Why? Because it was very scary for her. When you shoot something like this, she has to sing out loud with an earpiece, so she's only listening to Callas and the orchestra, and nothing else sounds in the soundstage. So the entire crew and the extras of the cast would only listen to Angelina's voice going out loud. So it's very scary, but it's the only way to do it. So once you have that, you go to an editing room. There's no AI here, there's no weird software. You have to have the actress Angie singing out loud, and then you can mix it. So there's always a little bit of Angelina when you hear. There's 1% sometimes, 2%, 5%, and in the last scene, the Ana Bolena scene, not the last one, but the previous one, it's 60% of Angie, and when we cut to the La Scala scene in the past, it's 99% Callas. So that's how you really do it, and the key thing is what Ed was saying. Is like, listen, we made this movie. I read 9 biographies. I saw every documentary, read everything about her. I've seen everything. I've listened to Maria Callas since I'm 8, and we did this movie, and I had no idea who she was. And it's because she has this enormous mystery. And she wandered you in, and if she does, it's just for a fragment of time. And that is a movie. You, as an audience, you're wondering what's going on, and you wonder, and that's why Angie was so perfect. We think we know a lot of Angelina Jolie because of the things that you don't know, believe me, and I don't. And that is the thing, that is what the enigma of cinema has to do. And I think it's something so beautiful because she chooses when to let you in. We worked very close. The camera was very close to her all the time. And she knows when she's more vulnerable and is opening the door for you to enter. And then she was just like, boom, I'll let you out, and you're out. And you can still look at her, but she's not letting you observe what she's actually feeling. And that operation, it's the key of this film, is the key to me of Maria Callas, not only her voice, but her presence, and of course what Angelina does in this film.
Thank you for that. So then perhaps we can finish with the roles that Alba and Pierfrancesco play, because in a way I feel like they're stand-ins for us, right? For those who adore this person or the idea of this person. Is that check out for you?
Yeah. They're us. They're me, both of them. I mean, in terms of being a witness of who she was and being there, and that is the entrance of all of us, I think. And they're fabulous actors, and they were able to do something very important for this film. Is that with Angelina they created a family, and that family talks about the loneliness that they have as individuals and how much they need each other. That's why this film, the last shot of this film, is both of them holding each other, looking to, somewhere and thinking whatever they're thinking. I don't even want to get in there, I have my opinion, but I want you to have yours if possible. But that is something that I think is so moving. I found some of the most gracious and wonderful people. And they were never acting. Those guys don't act. They don't. They just do, and they behave, and they have so much care. It's like the finest actors I've seen in my life, and wonderful people, and they engage with Angelina so well that they become this family. Actually, the scene with the cards, when they're playing cards, it's an improvised scene.
Yeah.
Wow.
It wasn't in the script, and it was like, you know what, I can just sit here, just play cards, and what happens came from their heart, because I saw that was happening. Not everything is so designed, sometimes you have to let it open to capture something that couldn't be imagined before.
Well, thank you for providing that window into this world and into their lives. Congratulations.